second technical session now. So speaker for this session is Dr. K.S. Jagdish sir. I want my colleague Professor Supraja ma'am to introduce sir. Supraja ma'am, over to you ma'am.
Yes ma'am, thank you so much. Good morning to all the dignitaries present here and the respected faculties from all other institutes, and a very warm welcome to the second session. And it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. K.S. Jagdish sir, who is our eminent speaker for the second session. And I'm just going to briefly explain about his achievements and career details here. Sir has obtained his bachelor's degree in civil engineering in 1961, and then he has done his MSc and PhD from IISc Bangalore in 1969. And later, Sir has continued postdoc fellowship from Karlsruhe, Germany, 1972-73. This 1 year, Sir has done postdoc from that university. And later, Sir started his academic career from IISc itself. He started teaching in 1967, and he was a lecturer in the starting, and then he was being promoted as professor in civil engineering IISc in 1984, and then Sir has been acting as a chairman for Astra. Everyone knows it. I guess this is a Center for Sustainable Technology. CST has this application of science and technology for rural areas. Shortly, we call it as Astra. So, Sir was chairman for this from 1983 to 1989. And then Sir, until retirement, Sir continued as professor in IISc Bangalore. And then after retirement also, Sir has been offering his services as scientist in emeritus status from 2002 to 2015. So later, Sir had guided many students like in postgraduate teaching and then PhD guidance, matrix structural analysis, structural dynamic, shell theory, and earthquake engineering. These are all Sir's specialization areas. And Sir's research interests are like alternate building technologies, structural masonry, earthquake resistant masonry, and rural energy systems. And Sir has been elected as was a member for Ashoka Trust Research in Ecology and Environment in IISc. And Sir has been working as promoter and director till 2020 in Hunna Shala Foundation, Bhuj, Gujarat. And then Sir is also president for Gram Vidya, Bangalore. So apart from this, if you're talking about Sir's publications, these are like N number, it's a like huge number, 150 papers, and Sir had written 5 books for future generations. So, and this is all about Sir. And Sir, Ma'am, Sir can carry on from here, right? Thank you so much for giving this opportunity, Dr. Subbalakshmi Ma'am and HOD Sir, and I'm very glad to be part of this. Thank you, Ma'am.
Thank you, Supraja ma'am, for the very brief introduction of Dr. K.S. Jagdish sir. Of course, all of us here who are attending the program know what magnitude of achievements sir has done, and the small introduction to him does not do justice to the works that he has done. And all of us have acquainted with either one of his books, of the many books that he has written in our day-to-day activities to teach students. Sir, we are all honored and privileged to have you on board and to listen to you on this on this occasion. I think we are all blessed to have you on board, sir. Over to you, sir. I'll just hand over the presenting rights to you. You can start with the session, sir.
Sir, I'm going to share the presentation for Sir. Please, yeah, I'm going to share it.
Yes, ma'am. I have given you the presenting options. You can present these.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir. At this time. Anyways.
ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾರೋ ಇದು ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಇದು ಬಾಡ
Sir,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I want to see. Sir,
ಹೇಳಿ ಹೇಳಿ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್.
video on ಮಾಡಬೇಕಿತ್ತು sir here.
Uh,
Can you see the screen, sir?
I didn't get you. You please ಇದು ಮಾಡಿ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್. Please make it full screen, ma'am. The screens are visible. The screen is visible.
Okay.
Please make it full screen.
Can see the screen, no, sir?
Yeah, we can see the screen and the voice is also audible. Sir, over to you,
Yes,
sir.
Sir is going to start.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to talk about energy and buildings. This has been my topic of interest for quite some time recently. Incidentally, I must say that civil engineers are normally not exposed to ideas of energy. We never learn much about energy throughout our bachelor's course. Maybe because the energy use, if you want to use energy, you get diesel, you get electricity, you can make use of that. But the implications of energy use, we are generally not bothered. But today, in recent times, what has happened is we have discovered that due to industrialization, whenever you burn coal or burn diesel oil or produce energy through burning fuels, you will find that carbon emission takes place. Because of this carbon emission, you have what is known as global warming. There is so much of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it leads to greenhouse effect. So the temperature on Earth is going to increase. It has been increasing now for the past 30 to 40 years in a very great extent. In fact, they say sea levels are rising and rare events of rainfall, uncertainty of climate, everything is happening. Is talked about global warming and climate change. So far, we never bothered about these things, but now we find that we have to look at these things. So now let us see what are the implications of using energy. First, look at the concepts of energy. When a force in F moves through a distance of u meters, the energy is spent is F into U Newton meter, and this is equal to 1 Newton meter is 1 joule. That is the definition of energy unit. And there are many forms of energy. In mechanical energy, it is Newton meter, it becomes joule. Thermal energy, normally we talk of calorie. When you burn any fuel, there is so many calories of heat produced. But this can be converted to actual energy value through the formula. 1 calorie is equal to 4.186 joules. And electrical energy is another form. Here, electrical energy measured in the form of kilowatt hours. 1 unit of energy is known as kilowatt hours. And this can be shown to be equal to 3.6 joules. There is also chemical energy, which leads to either electrical, thermal, or energy. And energy in buildings. Buildings consume energy. Energy due to construction is known as embodied energy. You add energy to do operation during life, because once you have a building, you run electricity, you have lights, you have all electrical devices, so you consume energy. This is the operation during life, this is cumulative. Embodied energy happens once in the beginning of the construction. And embodied energy itself has two aspects. First is production and transport of building materials. That is where the energy takes place. When you burn brick, you produce energy. When you produce cement, you and then you transport the building material. And then at the site, again you spend energy to do construction. You may have a concrete mixer operating using diesel. You may have a hoist using electricity. When you do polishing the floor, you use electricity. So there is energy due to construction. All these constitute embodied energy, which is the energy at the time of completion of the building. And when you use fossil fuels or burn of biomass, when you burn bricks using firewood, you are again sending carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Use coal, or when you use diesel oil to operate trucks, you are all sending carbon emission. And this carbon emission leads to global warming. So far we never bothered about energy in buildings, but now we find that our buildings contribute to global warming. So we should try to find out how much energy we are consuming and how to reduce it. Now let us look at the carbon emissions from various countries. The worst culprit today is China. You can see this figure that in 2005, it produced 5,667 metric tons of carbon dioxide. In 2015, it produced 10,000 and odd tons of carbon dioxide. It is the tops today in the world. In 2005, US was the first, slightly more than China. India was fourth. Russia was third in 2005. But in 2015, India has moved to the third position, consuming about 2,400 million tons of carbon dioxide every year. Now, we are a poor country, 1.3 billion people. How is it that we are consuming so much energy? But if you look at the fact, in spite of this population, let us say 10% of India, who are probably relatively well off, consuming a lot of energy. 10% of India is comparable in population to Japan. So half the carbon emission we are producing is coming from the small number of rich people in this country. Today, notice that any house has so much of consumption of electricity. And during construction, you spend energy like nobody is busy. So because of all this, you find that India is producing a lot of carbon dioxide. And if you want to reduce global warming, all the countries in the world are supposed to reduce their energy consumption. You find that except Germany, which reduced its consumption from 2001 to 2005 and 2015, all the other countries have been consuming more. UK has shown slight reduction in energy. And although India is a poor country, we find that enough rich people in this country are causing global warming. And 40% of the national carbon emission comes from buildings. The report from Center for Science and Environment. So this is a significant contribution to global warming. So we should calculate how much energy we are consuming, how much carbon dioxide each building is emitting. To understand the issues in energy, we will look at the energy due to fuels. Firewood is a well-known fuel that has been used since ancient times. As 1 kilogram of firewood makes 15 to 17 kilograms of 15 to 17 megajoules of energy. Coal has slightly more, 19.98. This is inferior variety coal. Good quality coal will have 25 megajoules. Charcoal is a very good fuel, 25 megajoules per kg. Rice husk is also a fuel, Very often people use rices for burning bricks, 13.4 megajoules per kg. Diesel, 38.7 liters megajoules per liter. It is one of the high energy intensity. Lignite, which is an inferior form of coal, is 16.33 megajoules per kg. This information, when you calculate the amount of fuel used for any activity of building construction, you can estimate the megajoules of energy that particular building material. This is all about fuels, but electricity is on a different footing. Energy calculation due to electricity depends on the source of electricity. If the source of electricity is hydroelectric, you are in a very fortunate situation because 1 kilowatt hour is only 3.6. But unfortunately, most of our energy, nearly 70% of our energy comes from thermal source. Because hydroelectric energy is not enough. Looking at our demand for energy. To meet all the requirements, you have to produce energy from coal, for burning coal. But if you want to produce 1 kilowatt hour of electrical energy, you need to burn 0.7 kilogram of coal. This is equal to 14 megajoules of energy. Although hydroelectric energy means 1 kilowatt hour means 3.6 megajoules. If you want to get the electricity from thermal, you will have to spend 14 megajoules of energy. This is one of the disadvantages of electric energy. But electric energy has very great advantages. In spite of all this, you'll find electric energy is the most, even for transport, your metro, rail transport, everything you are using electricity. So let us look at the embodied energy of building materials. I've listed some of the typical building materials. One brick, which weighs 3 kilograms, requires about 0.3 kilograms of firewood or 0.2 kilograms of coal, which means 4.63 to 5.6 megajoules of energy. Cement is also a high energy material, 3 to 3.6 megajoules. Today, they are making a lot of efficiency in cement production using the dry process instead of the wet process. In spite of that, there is so much of energy. Lime is produced in small kilns, so it is more inefficient. 6.2 to 8.1 megajoules. Lime plus fly ash. See, fly ash is a byproduct. There is no energy for fly ash. It is obtained as a byproduct when powdered coal burning. And this has very good properties in Barcelona. When you mix lime and fly ash, the energy comes down to 2.08 to 2.6. So lime plus fly ash is a very good alternative. Steel is one of the major culprits. It consumes 28.8 megajoules. Aluminum is even worse, 236.8. Glass also consumes energy. Even sand, if you transport 100 kilometers, 1 meter cube will consume 154 megajoules. Quartz aggregate, you produce by crushing granite, 111 megajoules. Marble, you get marble from Rajasthan. Because of transport, the marble is 200 megajoules per meter. People have a great fancy for using marble for buildings in luxury buildings and five-star hotels. This means there is so much of energy and so much of carbon. Mangrove tile also consumes a lot of energy. Depends on the type of kiln. If it is Hoffman kiln, 5.2. If it is continuous kiln, 15.8 megajoules. Hollow clay block is a recent product imported from abroad, and this has an energy of 16.72 per block, but this is very heavy block. To that extent, it is more efficient than the burn. Composite aluminum panel. People are very fond of using exterior composite aluminum panels. For 1 meter square, it consumes 659 megajoules. So these are some of the luxury items which are very highly energy intensive. If you want to reduce energy in buildings, you should try to cut down on the use of such expensive material. Now, what do we do for alternatives? I gave you example of so many building materials which are expensive. Can we replace them by alternatives which consume less energy? Let us look at one issue of the building block. Building blocks are very important. Bulk of a volume of a building is consumed in the block used in the wall. We have the brick. I have given the sizes of different blocks. Each block has a different size. You take stabilized mud block, which is 2.5 times the brick in size. Hollow concrete block, which is about 5 to 6 times the size of the brick. So, and you find that the energy of all these vary in such a way, but when you compare the energy for brick equivalent, same volume, stabilized mud block consumes less than 1/4 the energy. Hollow concrete blocks also less than 4. Hollow clay block is about half, less than half. Cut sandstone. You go to Kutch area, in Bhuj, there sandstone is cut through an electrical device, and that cut sandstone, in spite of using electricity, has a very low energy. Very little electricity is used, and you will get a block which consumes less than 1/4 the energy. So we now have 4 alternatives. This means you should not use brick anymore. You want to reduce energy and carbon emission. Carbon emission also comes down significantly when you switch over from brick to these alternatives. So there are 4 alternatives. We should switch over to one of these alternatives. Then mortars. The mortar is a very important element in a building. Whenever you block together, plaster it, use cement mortar. Let us look at mortars. Cement mortar, 1:6 proportion, has an energy of 1561 megajoules per meter cube. One point I would like to make is this 1:6 cement mortar is a very bad mortar. No other country uses this mortar. You go to England, you'll find that they will always add lime cement mortar. The reason being, cement mortar set very fast. It will set within an hour. And if you mix the mortar, you have to finish using it within an hour and keep mixing it every 1 hour. No contractor wants to do it. Once they start mixing in the morning, they would like to use it till the lunchtime. So 1:6 cement mortar is a bad mortar. If you add lime, the setting time is increased. So, but unfortunately, 1:1:6 cement lime mortar also consumes even more energy than cement. So this is not a good alternative if you want to reduce energy. But if you add soil to cement mortar, this is not accepted by our National Building Code. But we have found by our experiments over the past 40 years, to add a little bit of soil, 1:2:6, where it is a linear mortar, but along with sand, you have 1/3 of the sand is provided in the form of soil. You find that the energy comes down to 1267 megajoules per meter cube, and the setting time is increased to 2 hours or so. So this cement soil mortar you can keep mix once and use it in the next 2 to 3 hours. Lime pozzolana is also good mortar. Pozzolana, one of the examples is fly ash. You have 1:2 fly ash and 6 of sand. The energy is 1440, which is less than that of the cement mortar. So there are 2 alternatives which consume less energy and less carbon emission. So we will have to look at these alternatives. Now the other issue is we look at wall elements. Wall elements means you get masonry. Masonry unit. Burnt brick is the basic material. Cement mortar 1:6. So per cubic meter of masonry, the energy is 2630 megajoules. Same if you stabilize mud block with 8% cement in cement soil mortar 1:2:6, the energy is 730. Almost 25% of the energy of the burnt brick masonry. So again, is a very nice example how you can save energy, reduce carbon emission. Hollow concrete block is also a good option, and it has slightly more energy, 863, still very much less than brick masonry. Hollow clay block is about half the energy of the brick masonry. Even that is better than brick masonry. Advantage is hollow clay block is there. The density is very low, often around 1000 grams per meter cube. And because of reduced weight, you can build higher stories. Stone masonry has the lowest energy because stone is extracted by simple manual labor. There is no fuel energy spent very much. So its energy is also low. The problem is very expensive to manually process. Solid concrete block masonry is slightly greater energy because it is solid concrete. There is more material there. Hollow concrete saves material and is lesser weight. Solid concrete is heavier and also consumes. But anyhow, all these alternatives are better than. Again, it is a very clear indication you should avoid brick masonry. If you can avoid cement mortar also, it can lead to further reduction in. Concrete is one of the most popular modern materials used in all situations. Concrete. Let us look at the energy in concrete. Concrete, manual concrete is what you do using a concrete mixer. 1:1:1.5:3, that is M20, consumes 842.7 megajoules. You notice that this concrete energy is less than the brick masonry energy. Brick masonry is more expensive than even concrete because of the expensive nature of brick. If you have 1:2:4 or 1:4:8, the energy again comes down. Foundations you can manage is 1:4:8. That energy will be quite significant. Yes. RMC is becoming increasingly popular. RMC has less energy because they use additives, both fly ash and GGB. And when you use only GGBS as the additive, concrete, it has 12-13 megajoules energy, about 2/3 of the energy of manual concrete. Concrete with fly ash is also less, 14-33. So even in concrete, look at alternatives which can reduce the. Let us also look at roof elements. This reinforced concrete slab, which is normally very popular, is about 546.4 megajoules per square meter. We have what is known as the pillar slab. The pillar slab, show you the examples day after tomorrow. Replace the bottom portion of concrete slab by an alternative material periodically, which has less energy and is cheaper. And the filler slab, stabilized mud block filler, 438.2. Brick slab, very often want to do very fast construction, use a steel decking and pour concrete directly over the steel decking. The advantage is there is no farm work problem. But this energy is more because of the steel. Angle tail roof also consumes reasonable energy. It is on wooden support. If you steel support, the energy is much more than everything. Lastly, let us look at building technologies as a whole. If you want to produce a building, there are varieties of technologies. I have listed the 4 technologies here. First is 8-story RC frame brick infill. See, frame technology, high-rise technology is very popular because of the land price going up. People prefer to build high-rise buildings, and as the height is increased and as you use more and more brick, gigajoule, the 1 meter square of building plan area consumes 4.2 gigajoules of energy. Its carbon emission is 0.41 ton per square. Same 4-story RC frame with brick infill, because you reduce the height, the consumption 2.7 gigajoules. See, what happens is when frame construction use a lot of steel and cement. And steel is one of the very high energy consuming materials. So as you increase the height, more and more steel is used and the total energy consumed is also more. As the height reduces, the energy comes down. Now, the same 4-story building, supposing you build without reinforced concrete frame, using masonry, stabilized mud block walls. Today, engineers have forgotten building in masonry. You go and ask a contractor, you want to build a 2-story building, he will say, sir, let us put columns. Because the contractor gets a lot of profit in putting columns. So he will persuade you, concrete, this column is very strong. He wants to produce more strength than what you need. And he'll make money. But if you use 4-story masonry with stabilized mud block and reinforced for floors, you use normal reinforced concrete. The energy consumption is half that of the frame, 1.33. So it is clear, if you want to do masonry, you should try to prefer using building blocks with less energy, not brick masonry. Brick masonry will be very expensive. Use the alternative materials with consume less energy. I give you 4 options. Use any of them. The embodied energy building comes down. Carbon emission also comes down. And another example is 2-story SMB. Walls SMB. You can use SMB even for roofing, floors, as a reinforced block work. You do all that. You'll find that the embodied energy given comes down further. 0.62 gigajoules. Carbon emission is again less than 1/4 that of the 8-story house. So the lessons are clear. If you want to reduce energy, prefer masonry to RC frames. People may say, how can you build high-rise masonry with high-rise buildings? Number of stories, 10 to 15 stories with masonry. You will now see how it can be done. This operation energy, I spent some time on operation energy. When you want to look at life cycle energy, embodied energy should be added to operation energy plus energy during demolition. Supposing you take a 50-year lifetime, one could look at the entire energy life cycle. Operation energy is cumulative. Embodied energy happens just once when you beginning, little bit during maintenance and repairs. But bulk of the energy comes in the form of operation energy. And we studied various houses in Mysore and Bangalore. Based on the income per capita per month and the area of the building, we found that the kilowatt hours of energy consumption per year, in the case of building with the income of 5,000 rupees per capita per month, per year, the 222 kilowatt hours of energy. Go to higher income, 25,000, it is 3 times more energy is consumed. Because people with higher income will have more electrical gadgets, have fans, have a refrigerator, have a microwave oven, what have you. So energy consumption goes up. Same time, when you go to a person with a monthly income of 1.5 lakhs, you'll find that the consumption per year goes up to 1,200 and goes up to 1,600, depending on the area of the building and the number of people in the house. You'll find that these energies go on increasing. Now, how do you compare embodied energy building with operational energy? I give you one example beside. You take a tall building with 4.2 gigajoules per meter squared of energy, embodied energy. Its operational energy, if it is 32.5 kilowatt hours per capita per meter squared per year, the total energy is 454 megajoules per year. In 10 years, it will become 4.54 gigajoules. So in 10 years, the cumulative energy will be more than the embodied energy. 10 years is not the life of a building, can go up to 40 to 50 years. This means during the lifetime, the operational energy is much more than the embodied energy. So it's very important to reduce operational energy. That means we should reduce the energy consumption in the maintenance of building. Today, fortunately for us, instead of the incandescent bulb, we got the LED bulb, which consumes very little energy. You get 3 watt, you get enough light compared to a 40 watt bulb. So the reduction in lighting energy is significant. But consumption energy in motors, in refrigerators will still be more. But the worst is air conditioning. If you use an air conditioner, you will spend a hell of a lot of energy. Because the air conditioner will be on throughout 8 hours. Let us say at night, 8 hours, you put it on. Its energy consumption will be overwhelmingly more than all the other gadgets. Today, air conditioning is very popular in this country, especially in areas where the summer heat is very high. But air conditioning is a very bad solution as far as global warming is concerned. People find it very comfortable to use electrical energy, using air conditioner, but you can reduce air conditioning, avoid the use of air conditioner. There is nothing like it as far as carbon emissions concerned. How do we do it? It's possible to look at solar passive cooling systems. There are methods. The Mughals use simple methods to keep the buildings cool. You go to Srirangpatna. There is an old Tipu Sultan Palace, Maryadwala. You look at the roof construction. It has a 2-layer roof. The 2-layer roof, the gap between the 2 layers, the air will get hot due to solar heat, but he has openings in the roof which will take the hot air away. This is a simple method of solar passive cooling. If you use such methods, you don't have to use air conditioning in many places. So we need to discover solar passive cooling method so that air conditioning. This is roughly a picture of energy use, both operational and burden. But now let us look at, I said that you have to use masonry and not frame construction. I know many civil engineers will look surprised at my statement because you go and talk to any contractor and civil engineer, if you want to build a building more than 1 story, they will say we will put up concrete and consume a lot of space. But let us look at what's happening all over the world. Examples of high-rise masonry. Can we build high-rise masonry? Possible. This is a very interesting example. 19th century. 19th century, I don't think reinforced concrete was available. The only structural material was masonry. And these Americans, enterprising Americans, wanted to build a skyscraper. It's about 40 stories or so. So they said, let us build out of masonry. Their knowledge of masonry was limited, but they used 6 foot thick walls in the ground floor because they didn't know how to calculate the strength of masonry. They wanted to play it safe. So this building was built in 19th century, a skyscraper using masonry. Of course, they had problems because of settlement, because the weight of the building was so enormous. But it shows possibilities of masonry. But let us look at Switzerland. Switzerland has no steel industry. So if they want to build high rise, they have to import steel. But they had a brick technology where their bricks since the 70 MPa, they are better than your concrete. They found that, and their knowledge of masonry also improved in this period of time. Masonry research picked up in the 40s, especially in Europe, and they have built a 18-story load-bearing masonry building, wall thickness 127 to 245 Switzerland. So if the strength of the block is good, can build high rise. And Switzerland has no fear of earthquakes also. So they have happily built high rise masonry. Not only Switzerland, you get UK, Denmark. Denmark also doesn't have a steel industry. It's such a small country. But they know how to produce high strength bricks. And with wall thickness of 210 to 355 millimeters, they build high rise. Not merely Europe, come to Chicago. 1960s, they have built a high rise building, I think 14 stories or so, 14 or 16 stories. Wall thickness 305 mm. The advantage in American practice is they can use hollow concrete blocks. Hollow concrete blocks, if you want to reinforce against earthquakes, you can introduce a rod in some of these hollows and grout that hollow. So you can introduce reinforcement very conveniently in the wall. This hollow concrete. And the hollow concrete block, because dead weight is less, it facilitates building high rise. This they have discovered. America, where the labor cost is high, still they have found these advantages to do this instead of reinforced concrete. Cleveland, 14-story building. This is there is a textbook on masonry from one Mr. Narendra Tale from US, an Indian settled in the US, written a book on masonry. This is a photograph from that book. He talks of high-rise masonry, again using hollow concrete blocks. So Western countries are doing high-rise masonry. In our country, but 2 stories, you want to use reinforced concrete frame because the contractor gets more profit. I think the engineers are doing a disservice to our society by thinking only. I think we civil engineers have become very blind. We do not think afresh. Look at facts carefully. The typical hollow concrete block. See the small wall thickness. Because of this, hollow concrete block will have a density of 1200 kilogram per meter, half that of normal concrete. So if you reduce the density by half, it's even less than the density of brick. So you see the great advantage of using hollow concrete block. And it has already been done in India. Although other parts of India, people still believe in reinforced concrete frame. Look at what done by an engineer by name Ganesh Kamath in Mumbai. He built hollow concrete block masonry like this. Once in a way, he introduces a rod and grouts that hole. Rest of the holes you don't provide the steel. Once in a way, you provide a steel. Some distance. That is good enough to take care of earthquake loads. This is a 6-story load-bearing masonry building in Mahi. So it has all been done in India. Hollow concrete block load-bearing masonry. 9-story hotel in Nashik. Hollow concrete block. This photograph sent to me by Mr. Ganesh Kamath. So he has pioneered the use of high-rise masonry, but I don't think our engineers have learned the lesson. They don't care because their profits are most important. If the country saves energy and improves global warming, they don't care. That is the unfortunate situation in our country. And I feel we should move towards load-bearing masonry, at least up to 10 stories. More than 10 stories, although the Western example is there, you can think of reinforced concrete. But another point which I would like to emphasize, see, I'm told there are 1 lakh apartments in Bangalore which are vacant. If people build high rises, it's a matter of speculation. The hope that the market will take it up. But unfortunately, most of these high rises are so expensive. Do not have enough crorepati's to occupy these houses. So what is happening is you're building material. I'm told there are 7 lakh apartments all over India which are vacant. This is a different kind of non-performing asset. Spend energy, you spend capital, there are no returns. Think engineers have to severely think as to what's happening to our urban planning. And if you want to build high rise, you have the method of using masonry, which is cost effective. And if you want to resist earthquake, there are ways of making masonry earthquake resistant. You don't have, people think that reinforced concrete is earthquake resistant. I will show you, I can show you examples from Gujarat where high-rise buildings have collapsed like 9 pins. Whereas one 4-story building became a 3-story building after earthquake. And there is another high-rise hotel building because the ground floor is full of columns. The building moved laterally by nearly 1 meter because of yielding of the ground. And it is no longer serviceable. Think twice before using reinforced concrete or earthquake resistant. It's possible to produce earthquake resistant reinforced concrete, but that is a very special kind of ductile concrete. One has to spend more money to produce that. And I don't think people are willing to spend more money. My feeling is you have to build, preferably build masonry. Don't think in terms of more than 8 stories because I do not know if there are buildings which are vacant. What is the point in building arrays? Maybe office buildings, you need to go higher. But residential buildings, one should seriously think whether more than 8 stories is required. Yes, I will close my presentation. If there are any questions, I can respond to them. I would also like to say that day after tomorrow, my presentation will talk about raised masonry buildings, showing the possibilities of alternative materials. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Dear participants, we are open for question. So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box, and I'd be pleased to read it out to sir. Dear participants, if there are any questions, please put it in the chat box. Sir, I have a question myself.
Yeah, please.
Though you have been so before I ask my question, there is one question from Dr. Jyoti. Sir, can you please elaborate on soil, cement, mortar energy issues?
Well, when you look at soil cement mortar, I gave the example of a mortar which is 1:2:6. This is actually effectively 1:8 mortar. That means the amount of cement I am using for the same volume is now reduced. That is the first reduction in energy consumption. Secondly, the sand, which is 6, sand consumes with an energy figure. Whether you use sand, river sand, which is transported, or whether crushed mechanized sand comes with an energy. But soil does not have an energy. So to that extent, 1:2:6 mortar has less energy compared to 1:6. I don't know whether I have clarified the point.
I think you have driven the point, sir. And there is one more question from before we go there. Jyoti ma'am, is your query answered? Okay, sir, there is one more question from Arjun, if I may. Why most of modern buildings are dependent on RCC columns, not load bearing, even if they are small sized? I probably believe it's sized. I'll try to repeat the question. Why most of modern buildings are dependent on RCC columns and not load bearing walls, even if they are small sized?
I think the majority of the engineers today have a feeling that masonry is inefficient. One of the main reasons is no engineer studies masonry as a structural material. We test the brick. We don't know what is the strength of masonry. We never study, we don't test the strength of masonry at all in our engineering. So, understanding of masonry is practically zero. And you learn so much about reinforced concrete. You get carried away by its possible. I know reinforced concrete is a fantastic material. Expensive, consumes energy. Use it carefully where it is absolutely essential. When you do a roof slab, I'm sure reinforced concrete is one of the finest materials. Use reinforced concrete there. Even when I'm recommending use of masonry for vaulted roofs, I suggest use of a thin layer of concrete with laminal reinforcement for the great flexibility and advantage reinforced concrete provides. But I use it in a minimal way where it is absolutely essential. So we should regard concrete as an expensive, valuable material. Use it where it is absolutely essential. But our understanding of structural masonry, in fact, I think I was the one who has written the first book on masonry in our country. Of course, Professor Anand had written one book. You go to Western countries, even US has several books on masonry. UK has several books on masonry. They study masonry as a subject. Here, our civil engineers don't study masonry as a subject at all. So there is no understanding of masonry. And advantage of masonry is forgotten. So I feel we should teach masonry to our engineers, show how you can save money. Day of tomorrow, I will show examples of 4-story masonry buildings with stabilized mud block with no plastering. So you save on energy everywhere. And it is exposed masonry. Unfortunately, we in our country do not accept exposed masonry. We feel it is unfinished. We want it to be plastered. Because our bricks are so inferior in quality, we always want to plaster buildings. But Dr. Yogananda has shown how you can build buildings without plastering and how you can build, he has built up to four-storied load-bearing masonry buildings. And I think even up to 6 stories you can build to stabilized mud blocks. With hollow concrete block, you can build up 10 stories, no problem. And people have to, engineers have to understand the potential of masonry. See, Western countries, America is using 14-story load-bearing masonry. That means there is some deficiency in our knowledge. If America prefers load-bearing masonry, why are they preferring load-bearing masonry? They know it is more cost-effective. That means our engineers don't care for cost-effectiveness. Our engineers are blinded. You see, many things happen in our country based on hearsay. I will give you one example of hearsay. Some of the examples of soil cement buildings built by Housing Board, Karnataka Housing Board in Yelahanka, they were in bad shape because they did not use the proper precautions and the quality was bad. At the same time, Muda in Mysore, also in Ketmarnhalli, they built load-bearing masonry buildings out of soil cement. When they heard that the Yelahanka was in distress, they abandoned the soil cement work in Ketmarnhalli. Although I had seen the Ketmarnhalli blocks are very good. Some of the blocks were lying outside. So the topmost floor they finished with burnt brick because they were afraid. They did not test the bricks. They did not realize what is the performance. You dip it in water, you will see how the brick performs. They didn't want to do the test. So the engineers take decision on hearsay, not by thinking. So when do you have thinking engineers? We need to inculcate the habit of thinking among engineers. If they don't think, if they do blindly, it's something wrong with our education. So I have a feeling we have to correct this. We should teach masonry to people. And it was very sad. I saw these buildings. See, the fine bricks were lying outside in Ketmarnhalli because the government abandoned using that building. Some people in the low cost, the layout, they stole these bricks and built their houses. They knew that the bricks were good. People knew bricks were good. Engineers did not know. So the problem is the education of engineers. If you don't educate the engineers, you will end up with all kinds of problems.
Thank you, sir. I think you've validly put it that there is a huge need for us to educate engineers on the building materials, that is sustainable materials, especially masonry structures. That was my question as well, as to how do we advocate clients to take up masonry structures, because that seems to be a major challenge where clients are not willing to accept masonry structures, though we can emphasize on the importance, the advantages, all said and done. At the end of the day, a layman would still want to go for a RCC structure. So I just wanted
Because
to know how do we?
majority of the engineers are not convinced.
Yes, sir.
Majority of engineers today, see, what happened was the Rajiv Gandhi Housing Corporation, they decided to build their buildings in satellite, Kengeri satellite town using soil cement blocks. Dr. Yogananda was a consultant. And Dr. Vishwanatha was a leading consultant in Bangalore, Karnataka. He was not confident that soil cement could be used as laid burn. So he recommended use of flake. So you see, when a leading engineer expresses doubts about use of masonry, you'll find that all the other engineers follow suit. We need to have thinking engineers who will debate, who will question. But the interesting thing today is an engineer may not accept load-bearing masonry. But we have a situation. There are some users who see a good soil cement building load-bearing masonry. They come to Dr. Yogananda saying they want a load-bearing masonry after seeing the example by word of mouth. So by word of mouth, this is spreading, and we need to strengthen this. There should be more examples. We need to convert more engineers. It is not enough if only Dr. Yogananda builds these things. We need more engineers to building masonry. When an engineer builds his own house using masonry, people will get convinced. So we need more engineers who are building 3-4 story load-bearing masonry. Then the idea will spread. In fact, soil cement technology started spreading after Yogananda built his house in 1988 in soil cement. An engineer building his own house using a new technology, people got convinced. So we need more demonstrations by elite engineers building their own houses. Then people will get convinced. It is a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Understood. Yes. Sir, I think we have one more. Do we have time for one more question, sir?
I think we have time.
Okay. Sir, again, Dr. Jyoti, she wants to know if any type of soil can be used for masonry structures, and if there is any criteria for clay silt percentage regarding the soil properties.
Well, actually, this is we are going into tomorrow's presentation, but doesn't matter. For the benefit of the people who are listening to this, I would like to make this statement. One of the biggest problems with soil sim technology is the uncertainty of using different soils. See, in concrete, the properties are reasonably well understood. You have sand and aggregate, their behavior is reasonably well understood. So just take the right proportion and you have got the concrete of satisfactory quality. The case of soil, the variety of soil you come across is so enormous. Firstly, we have expensive soils, black cotton soils. It is a problem in using these soils. And then the soils, high clay soils, soils with low clay. In fact, one of the biggest problems in using soil is to taking a decision as to what is to be done. And here, testing the soil for its suitability becomes one of the problems in soil cement technology. Testing is simple. In fact, recently I have taught the concept to a person in the village, person who is looking after building construction in the village where I am working. I have shown him how to measure the silt and clay component of a soil. You have a 75 micron sieve and find out how much soil, how much sand is there in the soil. And if the proportion of sand is more than 65 to 70, between 65 to 75%, you don't have to worry unless the soil is expansive. You should make sure that the soil, in fact, most of the places you don't find expansive soils. If you are sure that the soil is not expansive, and if the sand content is between 65 to 75%, you can rest assured that the soil is okay. Only problem is some coastal areas where there may be salt incursion. If there are salts in the soil, then there may be problem. Organic matter is not good. Soils with topsoil, generally not good because topsoil will contain organic matter. So if you want to select soil, you should take soil below the first 6 to 8 inches of the topsoil should be discarded and the soil below has to be taken. And you should check it for the sand content, which is a very simple method. Use a 75 micron sieve and find out what is the amount of sand that is remaining after sieving. And that will determine the suitability of the soil. This has been done. Yogananda set up a laboratory. In fact, he has tested soil from all over India. So many people wanted to know, for them, he gives the recommendation what should be done. Once you know the amount of sand content, then the problem of selecting proper soil is more or less sorted out. But this one step is need.
Thank you, sir. I think some part of tomorrow's topic also you have let out. Thank you so much, sir. There is one last question. I think this should be the last question. As this is from Dr. Ken Vishwanath, HOD of Department of Civil Engineering. Sir wants to know when we vary the thickness of the columns as we go on to the higher floors. Sir wants to know if can we reduce the thickness of the stabilized mud blocks as well. So thereby reducing the dead weight, if I think I've put it correctly. Can we reduce the size of the stabilized mud blocks as we go ahead, like how we reduce the sizes of the columns?
Can reduce, but the only problem is you have to maintain the centrality of the wall. So you have a wall which is 9 inches. You can make a 9-inch block and a 7.5-inch block. Wall which is 9 inches below, wall above, if you build 7.5 inch, if you want to, normally you want to retain the inner surface. You want to retain the inner surface as the same, then the loading becomes eccentric. So that will be the only problem. Otherwise, reducing the thickness is not a serious problem. You can manage to retain the centrality of the wall.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the presentation and also the way you have answered the questions. I think it goes by the reputation that you have. Thank you so much, sir. I think now we can conclude the session. Can I request Vishwanath sir to conclude the session, sir? 1 second. Yes. Vishwanath sir?
Yeah. Shubhrashmi madam, are you there, madam? Okay, I'll meet. Okay. Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Sir, it was very, very lucid technical talk, and even a layman could understand. You have made us to understand embodied energy and carbon emission in such a simple way that definitely it'll motivate us and provoke us to see further whenever we start doing practical works or when we are into consultancy, because many of our faculty are consulting engineers. Definitely, sir, this is helping us out in reducing the carbon emission by the building blocks or wall panels or which are being used in the constructions. An overall view of energy utilized by the materials which are being manufactured and being used in the constructions. So it was very good, and we have definitely learned a few lessons wherein we'll attempt in reducing the carbon emission as well as maintain the strength and stability of the structure by utilizing the alternative material, as you said, combination of cement on soil, cement and fly ash, and different coarse aggregates, etc. So it was a very nice presentation, sir. Thank you so much for your efforts. And we are very small to appreciate your talk, and you are such a big man. And thank you so much, sir. It was nice.
Thank you.
We learned it.
Thank you. I am also leaving my presentation can be copied and it can be distributed. I want more people to use this information.
So thank you, sir. That's nice, sir. We will definitely share it among the participants, sir.
Sure.
Nice of you, sir. Nice gesture.
End of the session now, and we'll take a break. So next session, the third session of the day, will be starting at 2 o'clock. We'll break for the lunch now. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Dear participants, there is a poll question. Kindly disregard the second question. Kindly disregard the second question and please consider the first question only. Participants, the poll is open. You can exit the meeting once the poll is finished, and we'll meet back on the same link at 2 o'clock. Thank you.